All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexa. Today, our guest speaker is Dr. Emily Brigham. Emily is an assistant professor of respiratory at UBC, a practicing respirologist at Vancouver General Hospital and the Center for Lung Health Clinic in Vancouver, and a research scientist at Vancouver Coastal Research Institute affiliated with the Legacy for Airway Health. So she seems pretty involved with a lot of stuff. Emily's work focuses on identifying factors that contribute to susceptibility or vulnerability to air pollution and wildfire smoke, testing interventions to reduce health impacts, and caring for persons living with lung disease. So, without further ado, I will pass the mic on to Emily and let her tell us all about wildfire smoke.
Thank you so much for having me today. You all can call me Emily. I am a doctor. I do practice medicine. I do research, but I am Emily. So you can call me Emily. And let me work on trying to share my screen. Did a little test of this. Okay, excellent. Can everybody see that? Good. I'm just going to shift one more thing. So very excited to talk to you all today about something that I spend a lot of time talking to my patients about in my practice and has become a really strong focus of research for me as well. And it sounds like I've got a lot of interest in this group, which is a good thing because you all want to protect your health. So I will, and I'm happy to take questions. I would suggest we hold questions until the end. I may run a few minutes over with my slide. I'm going to give a smattering of some of the topics that I think I can help to address with further questions. And I imagine I'm going to get some good questions after this. I'm happy to stay a little bit over if there's need be. So I don't want anybody to feel rushed. And I'm also happy to provide answers to questions even after the session is over. So I will start off with land acknowledgement. So I am not from BC. I love BC. I moved here about 3 years ago. And so currently I want to express my very deep, deep gratitude for being here and present on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and also recognize how deeply climate change is impacting these populations and these Indigenous peoples on this land who have generational knowledge to share. So very grateful to be here. I'm learning more and more about BC every day and just so in awe of this environment and the people that live here. Today we're going to focus on a few things. So I'm going to try to start broad and talk about climate change and health and some of the things that we can expect. Then I want to narrow in on the populations of individuals who are really at highest risk of health effects due to climate change, and we'll focus in on wildfires and extreme heat. I'm going to end up talking mostly about wildfires, but we're going to see both of these things at the same time. So I don't think you can talk about wildfires without talking about heat. I'll discuss a little bit about exposures and most commonly wildfire smoke exposure, because it can be a little bit complex to talk about, to think about, and to understand what you're hearing about in the news. And then we're going to go into an initiative that has started very recently where we're trying to actually have adapted what the strategy for an asthma action plan and COPD action plan to a wildfire and extreme heat action plan to help prepare folks for the upcoming season. So starting out with climate change and health. So this is a figure from the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences that is part of the National Institutes of Health. They fund research in the United States. And if you go to any major research organization or health body in the States, in Canada, really globally, you'll see that they're coming out with figures about climate change and health. So you can choose the figure that you like best. I like this one because it really walks you through some of the things that we're seeing. We start off with what are acknowledged changes in our climate. We are seeing average global temperatures rise, and with that, we are seeing extreme weather, sometimes very hot, sometimes very cold, and with that, we're seeing changes in rainfall, changes in sea levels, and changes in growing seasons. And all these things are leading to downstream effects, some of which I just mentioned, but also including things like air pollution, like wildfire smoke, as a result of dry seasons, of drought, of fire suppression over time, which isn't directly climate change, but then you have extreme heat layered on top of that, and we're seeing more and more fires like we did last year. Other things that we are expecting to see and are working to develop resilience to and to adapt our strategies to as healthcare providers and as the government bodies and agencies, including changes in our food supply, really changes in some of the diseases that we see. We know that as global temperatures change, the habitats for things like ticks and mosquitoes is going to change in terms of range, and we may see new diseases arising in areas where we didn't expect them before. And unfortunately, affecting me and many people on this call, I'm sure we're expecting to see increased levels of allergens over time. So things that we need to sort of prep ourselves for and start thinking about as care providers and patients. Today, we'll focus on extreme heat and wildfire smoke. Can't tackle everything today, but happy to talk about some of those other things later. And of course, all this leads to health effects. And really, we have to anticipate these health effects, and we have to think about ways that we can prevent these health effects from occurring. And we today are going to focus and start our conversation with wildfire smoke and what is known and what is not known. So I'm sure you've read about some of this in the news or heard about this from our respiratory therapists here, heard about this through BC Lung, heard about this through your providers. But a lot of what we know about wildfire smoke and the health effects is very, very short term. Wildfire smoke is hard to study because it's less predictable in terms of when it's going to arise. And because it's not an exposure that can be averaged over a long period of time, it's tough to come up with models to look at longer term health effects. Those are under development. We are actively working on those. I am actively working on those, but we know more about short term. So everybody who's experienced wildfire smoke knows that you can have respiratory health effects, including cough, wheeze, phlegm, difficulties with breathing. This can also lead to infectious and non-infectious bronchitis, drops in lung function, exacerbations of underlying respiratory disease, which can contribute to healthcare use like emergency room hospitalizations. I put a question of lung cancer there because there is one study out there with sort of some complex modeling that suggests if you look at it a certain way, you may see increased rates of lung cancer with wildfire smoke exposure. I think that is yet to be confirmed, but there is a study out there that is starting to put some links together. We also see effects on the heart. So higher rates of heart attacks, heart failure, and again, hospital visits related to that. Sometimes with wildfire smoke and really with any air pollution in general, it can be harder to think. We actually find that people's abilities to do tasks can be reduced, can cause headaches, strokes in some individuals. And for folks who have really close ties to the land or who are experiencing smoky days for long periods of time, can be really detrimental to mental health. And there's some emerging data coming out that actually wildfire smoke may contribute to preterm birth as well and adverse birth outcomes too. A lot of that data is coming from the BC CDC at British Columbia. So we're learning more and more about smoke, but the main tenet and what we're going to talk about closer to the end today is how to avoid it and how to avoid it as best we can. And it's very important to protect those who are the most susceptible or the most vulnerable to smoke, and to think about those populations when we are trying to come up with guidelines and we're trying to come up with strategies to really protect our population. You may hear these words used interchangeably, susceptible and vulnerable, but in the context of environmental health, they really mean very specific things. So susceptible or susceptibility is really when you have two people who are at the same level of exposure. They're maybe standing in the same amount of smoke, but one patient has a much higher risk of an adverse health outcome. So let's say you have two individuals and one has lung disease and one does not. The individual who has underlying lung disease is more susceptible to the effects of that smoke. Vulnerability in environmental health doesn't mean somebody who's weaker. It doesn't mean somebody who can't change necessarily their situation or their potential risk, but it is an individual by virtue of what they do or what's around them who has a higher risk of it or is going to be exposed to more. So we think about groups like outdoor workers, like wildland firefighters. We think about people who work in construction or individuals who have poor housing that are unable to control their indoor environment. Those may be vulnerable groups. They have higher levels of exposure. And that's important when we think about strategies for protection. But here's an example. So here's some data to back this up. So this is from the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States, looking at different levels of risk of visits to the emergency department for cardiovascular causes, for heart causes on the left panel, and visits to the emergency department for respiratory health issues in the right panel. On the bottom, on the line, so for the heart issues and the lung issues, you'll see increasing doses of smoke exposure. So it goes from light doses to medium to dense, and I don't have the exact numbers of what they use within this. But the important part are the colors and the spots above the line, which align with different groups. So I want you to focus on the blue group, who are those individuals who are age 65 and older. Everybody else who are on those lines are adults of varying ages. What you can see is that the blue dots are consistently higher at the same level of exposure in terms of the risk of these adverse health outcomes, suggesting that individuals who are in the age group of 65 and above are more susceptible at the same levels of smoke. So that is a group that we really want to make sure that we give enhanced resources to as we move through. We also see that as smoke levels get higher, these individuals have higher and higher risk as judged by their points moving higher and higher up on the graph. So again, a group that's of high focus, and they're not the only ones. So age greater than 65, infants and young children under the age of 5, pregnant women, and people living with chronic lung and heart disease. And these different categories are things where if you fall into multiple of these categories, you may be at enhanced risk compared to just being in one category alone. This is not an exclusive list. After I talk a bit about extreme heat, I'll give you a much longer list of folks that we're looking out for. I spend a lot of time educating individuals with lung disease, and I have a strong belief, given how much patients with lung disease are educated about their disease process and self-management, that really individuals with lung disease can help to act as ambassadors for protecting other groups that are susceptible with lung disease, really can help educate others and protect others too. So hopefully this is something that's empowering as you learn more knowledge about this. And some of these, so this is just taking a look at Canada in general and taking a look at the distribution of air pollution, or PM 2.5, and I'll talk about that, a metric of air pollution over the 2017 wildfire season. And you can see darker red means higher levels of exposure. Really BC and the interior in this season was sort of at the epicenter of wildfire smoke impacts. So it's really an important place for us to be doing this work and preparing our population for what we expect is to come and to continue to come. But smoke doesn't stay put, right? This is 2021, also showing smoke, another exceptional season. Red again is areas where there's increased fire activity, and smoke travels thousands of miles and is breathed in by millions of people. And so in the setting of 2023 and even 2021, many individuals are reaching out to British Columbia to find out, what should we be doing, right? We're now experiencing the smoke that you all have been experiencing on and off and really more consistently now for decades. How do we protect ourselves? So I think BC is, while heavily affected, also at an advantage in terms of potential preparedness. And these are some direct pictures. So I'm due to travel to UBC Okanagan, but I work with a postdoctoral fellow who's out there who's doing some research with the wildland firefighters and monitoring for health effects. And she sent me these pictures from 2023, really when they had to evacuate the campus. So we recognize that this is where we live. This is what we're dealing with, and this is what we need to prepare for. Emphasizing 2023 is a record-breaking year, and unfortunately we're on track in 2024 to have another very severe fire season. But this is a graph showing over time on the flat axis on the bottom. You can see the months laid out. The emissions, so cumulative amount of carbon emissions over time, over the course of that season. In 2023, how much smoke was released into the air in Canada just far outstripped anything that we had seen previously. And so I think we're starting to see these extreme seasons much more prominently, and we need to prepare not only BC, but all of Canada. So at the same time, we have heat. So what do we do in the setting of heat and smoke at the same time? Well, we have to be aware of symptoms. So I talked about some of the effects of wildfire smoke. Some of the effects of heat are listed here. This is another great infographic. I think this is from Fraser Health. looking at sort of signs of heat exhaustion. And then as you progress and have been exposed to heat for longer periods of time or at higher temperatures, you can develop into heat stroke, which are more severe symptoms and signs. And really, that's an emergency. That's when you need to get in front of a medical provider at a hospital and you need to get your temperature down. But how do we recognize some of those early signs of heat exhaustion to try to reverse things or prevent us from developing heat exhaustion is an important focus today. And as promised, so those 4 groups thinking about susceptible or vulnerable populations, when we think about heat and smoke together, really there's a lot more. So there's a lot of people who really need to understand and to hear this information. Folks who I haven't mentioned yet, so outside of heart and lung disease, anybody with another chronic disease has heightened susceptibility. Individuals who have physical or mental disabilities who have less ability to react quickly to their environment in response and to try to put in protective measures without support. That also includes individuals with underlying mental illness or who have social isolation or living alone and may not have somebody else who can help them as readily. I mentioned outdoor work, housing. There are certain medications that are important to discuss with your doctor in advance of heat season. It can actually reduce the body's ability to cool itself. This includes beta blockers, antipsychotic medications, but there's a whole list of them. We never recommend stopping medications without talking to your doctor because certainly that can have a whole host of other side effects, but things you want to think about talking to your doctor about in advance. And then people who use substances, including alcohol, who may also have slower response times to some of these changing conditions. So these are all really groups that, we want to educate everybody in the public, but these are some of the priority groups we think about when we're trying to get out wildfire, smoke, and extreme heat education. So what is in wildfire smoke? Why are we worried about it? So wildfire smoke is complex. It's what's released when things burn, which is a whole bunch of chemicals, gases, and compounds. We see things like carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, volatile organic compounds, and you don't have to remember all that. You just have to know that there's a lot of things in it. And one of the most important things that we track and we think about is something called particulate matter. The particulate matter is just like what it sounds. It's particulates, it's particles that float around in the air, little solid or liquid pieces that are of different size fractions, meaning they're different. We group them by size. And you can see sort of a schematic down in the lower right-hand corner of a human hair. The size distributions that we talk about and that you may have seen because the Government of Canada monitors these are PM10. Anything that's 10 microns or less in diameter, and that's like 1/4 of the width of a human hair, and PM 2.5, which is about the quarter of a fourth of a human hair or fifth of that. So those are the little, the pink dots. So the blue dot is the PM10, the pink dots, and anything smaller than that is the PM 2.5. And the PM 2.5 is important to know about because that is the one that is the air pollutant that's most closely tied to health effects and something that is reported very carefully by Canada. And part of the reason that it is so important and so closely monitored is because the size of particulate matter determines how deep into the respiratory system that it can get. Things that are larger tend to, before they move down deep into the lungs, they tend to kind of just deposit and hit the back of the upper airway. And they can have health effects, but the PM 2.5 can get way down deep into the lungs, go down through the lower airways, and even make it down into the alveoli, down into the the air sacs of the lung. And on the surface of all those particles, we've got lots of chemicals and toxicants that then hit the airways and interact with the airway walls. The really, really small ones can actually go all the way into the bloodstream and carry all those toxicants and chemicals with them. And that's part of the reason why we think they have such strong health effects. So as I mentioned, the Government of Canada monitors these. And they report them in a number of ways through government monitors, which are smattered throughout British Columbia. And we really need more in rural areas. There's a big push for that because they're heavily concentrated in urban areas where we monitor these things more closely. But they fall under a reporting system called the Air Quality Health Index. So the BC CDC has taken into account all the information they have about 3 of the major pollutants. That includes ozone, nitrogen dioxide, and particulate matter. And they use those, what's known of those relationships to say, okay, what is the air in this area showing? What's the concentrations of each of these pollutants? And what are the potential health effects that are linked with these concentrations? And then they put that into a score called the Air Quality Health Index. And the higher you are on that score, the higher the risk. So it's on the right-hand side over here, you can see those colors. So 1 is the lowest risk, 1 through 3 is considered low risk, and then it goes all the way up to 10 plus. I will warn you, so every country has their own air quality index or air quality health index. The United States has an air quality index or an AQI. You can get an AQI if you look on certain sites and they'll calculate it for Canada, but you really want to look at the AQHI because that's what's going to tie in with all the sort of the health recommendations and so forth. Okay, and the AQI goes from like 0 to 500. It just gets really confusing if you can't match it up with what the recommendations are. Canada also, or BC, puts out a Smoky Skies bulletin, and I'll talk to you about how to access that. But this is when wildfire smoke is likely to affect the air quality in the region within the next 24 to 48 hours. So it's a bit of a heads up. And I suspect some of you are receiving this already. And then last, government of BC puts out extreme heat alerts. And this is a bit more complicated how they calculate these. So again, they really work very hard to be evidence-based. So they look at the temperatures that in different regions connect with health effects or where they've seen health effects in the past. And so they've actually got different levels of temperature to which they provide these alerts in different regions of the province based on the health effects they've seen in those regions. So in the Northeast, for example, I apologize, this is blurry, but the Northeast, which is the green area, you get an extreme heat alert if for 2 days, the maximum temperature exceeds 29 degrees Celsius and the minimum never drops below 14. Whereas if you are in the Southeast, which is the pink, you get an extreme heat alert if your maximum temperature goes over 35 degrees for more than 2 days and never drops below 18 degrees. So it can vary a bit, and some of it has to do with acclimation of the population to different temperatures over time. But just know that it's not one size fits all for extreme heat for these extreme heat alerts in terms of outdoor temperature. So that's a whole smattering of background. We're going to go a little bit more into some details now, and then I'll take questions. But I want to introduce this concept of an action plan that you all have heard of because of action plans for asthma and COPD. So when I first joined the faculty at UBC, I work with the Legacy for Airway Health, which is a really generous donation that was given to UBC and Vancouver Coastal Health to start a research and teaching program that helps to advance the health of individuals living with lung disease in BC, but also prevent lung disease, particularly airways disease. And that group had done a survey in British Columbia, trying to understand how individuals are receiving, understanding, and acting on public health advice provided during wildfire events. And findings really felt that despite the fact that BC puts out a lot of public-facing resources, which are excellent, that more diverse methods of communication and really tailored messages to specific populations might help to improve access. And furthermore, physicians felt that it was within their scope of practice to talk to their patients about this, which is great, and that they wanted more resources to be able to do so. So I ended up being invited to present at a webinar for UBC professional development, and really aimed at speaking with a lot of family physicians. And we were talking about different strategies to make sure that your patient populations are protected in advance of wildfire season. And I was talking about, oh, of course, you want to make sure folks have their action plans in place. You want to make sure that they have extra medications in advance of the season so that if they have gotten their home environment to an optimal level, that they don't have to leave their house and so forth. And the moderator, who was Christy Newton, who's one of the family practice leads, said, wouldn't it be great if we had a wildfire action plan? We sort of all thought, yeah, that would be fantastic. Doesn't that seem like something we should do? And so I had just been hired as faculty. I had some time, and I had the Legacy of Airway Health group to work with me. And so we just sort of put pen to paper and started working on this. We based it very much on the asthma and COPD action plan framework, which is really dedicated towards educating patients about their disease and their responses to different things in their environment, providing tools and providing assessments in order to Here's what's happening to you. This is what you feel. These are your symptoms. This is your peak flow. Here's what you should do. And then you're prepared to actually do those things because we've provided you with the medications and the tools and so forth. So we took that and we tried to apply it to a wildfire action plan. And this is the very start of this on the left-hand side, one of our early versions. And I'm fortunate enough within Legacy of Airway Health is that we have something called a community stakeholder committee. And that is a group of individuals living with or supporting individuals with airways disease who partner with us as patient partners. These are not research participants. These are individuals whose lived experience helps to inform our research. And they help us to guide questions. They help us to look at practicality of our tools. They are actually involved as co-researchers with us. And there are plenty of opportunities to join this if that's of interest. The BC Support Unit, in addition, has helped us to form this process. So it's a great way to get involved with research if there's interest. But they provided some really essential feedback on this. And one of the early pieces of feedback was you cannot talk about wildfire smoke without talking about heat. We don't know if we should open our windows or close our windows, which is a really tough question to answer. So we decided to combine those and they helped us to do that. And we've come up with this much more finalized, although still fluid, meaning we're still taking feedback on this and trying to be responsive to the population, this combined wildfire smoke and extreme heat action plan, which goes through 3 sets of kind of steps. So 1, how do you check your air quality and your temperature? 2, in the second box, how do you get your home and supplies as ready as you can in advance of the season, with an emphasis on not everybody's going to be able to do everything, but every single additional thing you can do makes you that much more prepared. And then the third is, what's your plan? So how are we going to help you figure out the way to stay safe if an event comes and if you can't control your home environment or you need to move? So how, step by step, what are we going to do in order to make you safe? And then on the back, it's really tying together some of the public health evidence informed guidelines, looking at the air quality health index, so that once you check your AQHI, you can just turn it over and you know what your recommendations are to try to apply that. And it's just a single side document that goes ideally on the refrigerator or really somewhere that's easy to access. And then in addition to that, we came up with a handbook that goes through recognizing that not all providers are going to know how to fill this out. Not all community workers are going to know how to fill this out. So we have a community guide and a provider guide that walks through all the different steps to accessing these tools, links to the different handouts that are available in British Columbia, and tips and tricks as you go through for common questions that might arise in order to help someone to fill out their action plan as best as possible. So we'll go through a few steps, and I am mindful of the time because I know I'm at about half an hour now, but hopefully another 5 to 10 minutes and then questions. So first off, I know my air quality and temperature. So there's a lot of different places where you can get this information, but our real focus was to make sure that an individual had at least one that they were set on and felt comfortable using. So there are emergency alerts through the province. Really, these should come automatically through your phone if you have a cellular phone for heat. It is an automated system, but for smoke, those are not automatic. And so you can sign up for the air quality subscription service, and we put QR codes on this plan so that anybody who's got a smartphone could access it. But honestly, if you Google British Columbia Air Quality Subscription Service, you will find the site to be able to sign up for that and make sure that you are getting these emailed to you. We also noted that if you can see or smell smoke, the risk is high to very high. So you don't always need an app, but the tricky part about that is that if you can't see or smell smoke, that doesn't mean that the danger is 0. It's a really sensitive finding. It can tell you if danger is high, but it can't tell you danger, like there's no danger. So that's where checking your AQHI can be really important. Secondly, also, when you get an alert, you know there's risk. But if you don't get an alert, really, you should still be checking your local weather and so forth to see what levels of risk there are. It just means that it's not meeting the threshold that BC is reporting it at. There's also apps on the phone, the WeatherCan app or Hello Weather, again, directing people to the Canadian website so that nobody's getting confused and checking the other indices from the States and so forth. There's online places where you can check, and we encourage folks to check their conditions, their weather conditions at least daily. Identify a radio channel that works for you. There's also a phone that see that white sort of call out box, Hello Weather, where if you look online, that's a phone number you can call, and you just need to know your code for your region, and they'll provide you phone updates. And then we have a number of people who are uncomfortable navigating the internet and are uncomfortable using some of these other methods, but can call a friend, can call a family member, can call 811, can call somewhere and just know, in order to check, this is going to be my plan during wildfire season, I'm going to call someone, and that's how I'm going to find my information. And I will say, as we know, there are wildfires burning in BC. Because of my interest in this, I have signed up for weather alerts in every region, everywhere. So I get lots of emails. And this is an email alert that came through to me for Smoky Days very recently, just south of Prince George. So these are coming through. This is working. And we're getting smoky alerts. So this is one of the alerts that says smoke is expected in the next 24 to 48 hours. I'm going to flip over. We're going to pretend we're flipping over to the other side of the action plan right now, the fill in about activities. So ideally, this is done with a clinician or a physician who knows you and knows your individual risks and can work with you to know how you've reacted to smoke in the past, to kind of guide your behaviors. But this is looking at your health message for activity at varying levels of the air quality health index. You'll see there's also on the left-hand side, there's not only the BC Air Quality Health Index, but there's also 1 hour averages of PM 2.5 for individuals that may have access to other monitoring systems as well. So, and we know PM 2.5 is one of the most important in smoky conditions. And so that's why that is sort of an alternate metric there. But part of the way we know how to fill this in is based on, again, public health messaging. BC is ahead of the curve and has done a great job. And this now exists across Canada as well. But really, we know that for individuals who are at higher risk, fall into one of those higher risk categories, the activity recommendations are slightly different than for people who don't fall into any of those categories. And across all of these, it is important that no matter what, if you have symptoms, to seek cleaner air. So just because you are following the activity recommendations for your category doesn't mean you can't have symptoms. And that's a sign that you are being affected and you need to move to cleaner air. We also put together something for extreme heat as well. So the extreme heat alerts that come through, those are based on the outdoor air. A lot of the danger that we see is really truly in indoor environments and specific to individual temperatures. And so we purposefully, because those thresholds differ for outdoor air, we do not have those on these recommendations here, but we've put down different recommendations for thresholds in your indoor environment, in your home, with a digital thermometer or with a thermometer, and for your own personal temperature, and ways to cool yourself down. And again, the same thing holds true. If you are having signs of heat stroke, if you are having signs at lower temperatures than are necessarily listed here, you need to seek help and you need to seek care. Okay. So then next, everybody wants to know, what's my checklist for getting things, for making my home, for making my living space as safe as it can possibly be in the setting of these smoke events and heat events as well. So we put together a checklist, again, recognizing not everybody is going to be able to do everything, but every additional step that an individual takes is going to make them that much safer. So we recommend finding a way to get extra medications in advance of the wildfire season, seeing your family physician, checking in with them, your respirologist in advance or during, but ideally you schedule it in advance if you're able to check in, make sure you have an extra supply of medications. If you need to check in with your pharmacy, see if delivery options are available for during an event. I think that's a really good thing to have on hand. Think about how you're going to get food. Is there a delivery service? Is there a friend who can come drop food off if it's not safe for you to go outside? That can be really helpful to have on hand in advance. Thinking about making sure you've got a home thermometer and extra batteries as you need. For heat, window coverings to block the sun or the heat during the daytime. Some sort of way to cool your home. So an air conditioner or a heat pump, if you have one already built in. Some people do have air conditioning in their homes. I know not all of us do because it hasn't always been this hot where we are. Air cleaners, really important. These rapidly drop the particulate matter levels in homes. Wildfire smoke from the outside comes in, and we want to try to filter the air that's inside as best as we can, while prioritizing heat, because heat can be more dangerous in the short term than smoke. So if you have to choose between if you're in hot and smoke, unfortunately for most people, it makes sense to still open your windows and let the cooler air in. Supply of well-fitted masks. We know N95s and KN95s can filter out a lot of the particulate matter. So while you don't want to be wearing these around inside in your house, you don't want to sleep with these on. If you do have to go out, it's helpful to have a good supply on hand. Cloth masks don't really do anything. Triple layer medical masks, the kind that you get when you walk in the hospital front door. If they fit really well, they've got some moderate protection, but really N95 respirators are the best. And then pick a room in your house where you're going to, any equipment that you get, you are going to have this as like your ideal room. This is going to be your clean, cool air room. A lot of times we recommend that this is a bedroom because you spend a lot of time sleeping. Everybody does. And so if you can optimize that environment, you're going to get at least 8 hours or however many hours that you sleep in those ideal conditions. Talking to service providers, if you have air systems like heating systems and so forth that bring outside air in, as to how you can put it on recirculate mode as possible, or how you can optimize conditions. And if you work in outdoor environments, ideally talking to your employer ahead of time, like, hey, what can I do instead if this is possible? How can we work around this, or how can I get the maximum protection? Picking an air cleaner is a common question that comes up. I can answer more questions about this, but really you want to look for the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers, or AHAM. This is the sticker that's on there. It'll tell you about space rating. So you want to pick something that works within the room you're going to put it in, because that'll be the maximum efficiency for filtering out. So measure your space and then go pick one out. You want a HEPA filter in there that'll get out the small particles, and you don't want to pick one that uses like electrostatic products, which actually create ozone, which is one of those pollutants that can actually be more harmful. So HEPA filter, simple, fit it to your space. There's other fancy things you can go down the road of, but those are kind of the basics of that. You can also make your own. So these work pretty well. DIY air filters. So there is a sheet through the BCCDC that tells you how to make these. Important that you have a newer fan, that you're not leaving this running when you're not in the room, and that you are not obstructing airflow. The fans that use more filters tend to do better, and you want to replace the filter every time you notice that it's visibly soiled. But there's a way to make a DIY filter that's actually much cheaper. They work pretty well. Also, big thing. So an air purifier and an air conditioner are tax deductible medical devices for patients who are living with chronic respiratory disease and severe chronic diseases. You need a prescription from your doctor. Your doctor should absolutely give you this. I had a patient who came into clinic to see me yesterday who said, yep, I put it on through my tax return. And I said, let me see if I can find a way to get you air filter replacements through that. And I don't know if that works yet, but we're trying it. But absolutely have your doctor write you a prescription for an air filter, a cleaner, a purifier, and claim it on your taxes as well, if you have chronic respiratory disease. So CRA will help you to cover it. And then finally, have a plan for the day of an event. If you can't optimize your space, what can you do? And also, ideally, where are you going to go? If I must go outside, I have masks in place. I have a to-go bag in advance, packed in case I have to leave. There's a fire near me. The smoke is too heavy. I've got all the things I need, including medications. I've got my masks. I've got like my place where I'm intending to go. And I've got safe transport options and a way to get out too. Ideally, we like if you're home, if you're just, power goes out or something, you're just not able to maintain safe conditions inside of your home, think about places where you can go to. Friend's house, family member's house who has these things in place. Many regions will open up clean air or cool air shelters, though they won't always be available until actually the time when you hit one of these events. So sometimes we can't plan those as much in advance, but think about libraries, shopping malls, community spaces inside of apartments and so forth. There's a number of places that we can think creatively about to have a plan on the day of, if you're unable to sort of control the conditions within your home. And we ideally recommend that folks have a buddy. And that buddy can be anyone, ideally somebody who could help you if there's a concern, but really the idea is just to check in and make sure you've got a time. All right, there's a heat wave coming through. We're going to check in at 9 a.m. We're going to check in at 6 p.m. And if I don't hear from you, I know there's a problem. Or if you don't hear from me, there's a problem. And we're going to check in during smoke, and that's how we're going to stay safe too. This is going to be something that we are agreeing to. So, and that can be really helpful too, especially for folks who are maybe living alone or don't have as many resources. So I just want to thank a whole bunch of people who've contributed to this effort. I know I'm presenting this today, but this action plan and putting together all this evidence has been a hugely collaborative effort. We are not paid to do this. This has been just something that we've kind of like done out of a passion project and like realizing that there might be a need. So, and Interior Health has been great in working with us. Vancouver Coastal Health has been great in working with us. We're doing a quality improvement project with this and piloting it in a couple places. So I'm just lucky to work with some really great and motivated folks. And we actually, for something that is funded, so Canadian Institutes of Health Research just awarded UBC a really large Teams grant to focus on looking at the chronic health effects of wildfire smoke. So soon we will know some of these answers, some of these things to try to inform our protection efforts for the population. So I've run over. I very much love talking about this, as you can tell, and I'm happy to take any questions. So thank you so much. I'll end the slideshow.
Thank you.
Can you hear me, doctor?
I can.
Yeah.
I see Lindsay talking, but I'm not sure if she's
Yeah. Just a little question, I'm a senior, about 85, and I just visited India about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
It was very heavy air pollution and crowding, and I got sick, had fever, and then the doctor gave me some antibiotics, like what do you call it? Yeah, some antibiotics is called Salvin Cold or erythromycin, something like that. So it really helped. But I still, I have a lot of hoarseness, in my throat, coughing, and wheezing. So I'm just really concerned, what's going on. Can you offer some advice?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it will of course be difficult for me to give you personal medical advice, but I can tell you some things that we think about and would generally recommend. So you've brought up a really good point, is that we know that higher levels of air pollution, including wildfire smoke, make us more susceptible to infections and respiratory infections too. And in fact, one of the groups who I didn't have listed on my slide is that individuals who have respiratory infections may be more susceptible to wildfire smoke. So COVID-19 and wildfire smoke together can create some hairy situations. So while I have a lot of patients who travel internationally and travel to areas of high air pollution and come back and tell me that they've had an asthma exacerbation or that they've gotten an infection. And so we see this clinically as well. But certainly if returning to clean air, your symptoms are continuing, but absolutely reach back out to your doctor to check in. And yeah.
Thank you. How about, some other factors, just like I have a little bit acid reflux or GERD, will they also affect, the throat and the coughing and wheezing?
I think you're asking, would wildfire smoke also affect the throat and coughing and wheezing?
And acid reflux.
And acid reflux. I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question. I mean, certainly it can affect like the particles themselves can deposit anywhere in the airway, so they can have direct irritation, but I'm not so sure about reflux. However, we do, I mean, particles come in, we talk about breathing them in and breathing them out and having them affect the lungs, but a lot of particles actually do go down into our GI tract. I just don't know if they're associated with reflux. It's a really great question.
Okay. And it will affect the Eustachian tube in the ear also, because I get a lot of hoarseness and my ear also, just like tinnitus, as whatever happens, causes a lot of problem. So
it
maybe
can. Yeah.
There is shortage of doctor in Victoria. I know I don't have a GP. I have to wait a long time. It's very bad.
Oh,
So
goodness.
maybe I should go to emergency or just hang on. What is your advice?
Well, unfortunately, I can't give specific advice regarding that, but I would say it's very important to talk to a healthcare provider if you're having these ongoing symptoms to get checked out. There are I couldn't give you an exact one, but I know that there are some online assessment systems too, like virtual care, in the event that you don't have a GP close to you. But if your symptoms
Yeah.
are severe, bothersome, if you're having worrisome signs and symptoms, then it's
Yeah.
always fine to present to the emergency department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I asked that whether he can refer to ENT. It takes about 6 months to find an ENT, it's a long wait. Yeah.
I know. I know. It's been a real struggle for access to doctors in the province. And I will tell you, I know COVID-19 has played a large role in that, but it's just very difficult. I know we're working a lot at UBC to have more rural outreach, especially with the advent of virtual care and so forth. I can't speak to ENT in particular, but I know our division is actively working on that, to try to fill in some of the gaps that exist. But I empathize.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe I should find out a doctor in Vancouver. But perhaps in Vancouver you can find more doctors. Perhaps.
There's certainly a higher concentration of doctors, but there's also more people. So it's it can still unfortunately hit some waiting lists. But there are more doctors living in that space. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Raj. We're
Thank you
gonna,
very much. Very
yeah,
kind of
thank you.
Emily, we had a
Very-
question. What is the action plan available for people?
It is available. And it's available through a number of different ways. So we have posted an older version of the action plan, which I will try to put the link into the chat, or actually maybe I can send it out after. Maybe I can send it out. I'll send it to you guys after. So I've been trying to post it and freely share it, really honestly,
Thank you.
with the idea that this is something that really should be filled out with some enhanced clinical guidance. So like partly in conversation with a provider. This updated version is not yet available. This was developed in concert with Vancouver Coastal Health. So I want to talk to them and make sure I have their permissions to post that. But we're working on ways to get that out there too. But as soon as I'm sort of able to, we'll post that updated version. But almost that complete version is available online already.
Wonderful.
And we're also, other options. So we are doing a quality improvement project with Vancouver Coastal Health through the Center for Lung Health. One of our respiratory educators there, as well as our COPD educators. So that's the way that we've structured that, is that individuals who they think may benefit from receiving the plan, they will work through the plan with, and then any individual who wants to provide feedback on the plan can. They don't have to in order to receive the plan or to work through it. And then we've also been working with Tammy Butner and Jacqueline Turvey too, within Interior Health, who have been doing the plan also, and they've just been amazing to work with. So those are some other ways. And then we also have another respirologist who works in Kelowna, who's starting to adopt the plan too. So we're trying to disseminate and make it available.
That's great. I think it's phenomenal. Question just to link into that. Maureen was asking, how can she sign up for the study at UBC?
So question. So the quality improvement project is not so much of it's all this terminology anyway. So it's just if you're just getting care by one of our respiratory educators, you can be involved and receive the plan. However, if you're talking more about signing up to provide sort of insight and become involved in research from the aspect of like almost somebody who's an investigator too, I can send out the contacts for that. Legacy for Airway.
Yes.
We love having
Oh,
patients.
thank you, Emily. That's what I want.
Okay. Yeah, that's wonderful. I can share that information after.
Can I send you my email? Can we do it that way?
You know what? Why don't we try, Maureen, are you on the Better Breathers Facebook page?
No, I don't have the link to it yet.
Okay, why don't you send me your email in the chat and then I can get the information from Emily for you. Does that-
Certainly, Lindsay. That's
Lovely.
awesome.
Perfect, thank
perfect.
you.
Maureen,
Thank
I'm much
you.
less likely to lose it if I have somebody else helping me keep track of it. So thank you for your understanding.
That's a lot of pressure on me. Jim has a lovely question. Is there such a device as a good air conditioner combo unit that includes an air purifier and filter?
Yeah,
gonna
so
look
that
at
can be
trio.
tricky. So you can look for air conditioners that have filters. So portable. So
I know, that's a tough question.
yes, it's like the ultimate great question. They're not always cheap. So one of the most environmentally friendly, best ways that you can help to filter your home is with something called a heat pump. Now, that is something that is installed. And what it does is it helps to regulate the temperature in your home, but it also just refilters the indoor air. And so you're not pulling air in from the outside, you're keeping your home cool, and then it's filtering the air that's inside. There are some portable air conditioners that don't pull in air from outside don't pull in air into your breathable air. So what they'll do is they'll pull in air from outside and use it in kind of like the coolant system, but then they'll filter the air inside. And those in combination with an air filter or an air purifier can be really helpful. It's recommended that if you do have an air conditioner where you're pulling in air from the outside and it's a smoky day, but you need your air conditioner on, right? Because heat can be more dangerous than smoke. You got to just put your air purifier in the same room. Unfortunately, that's kind of like our make do that we have. It's not a perfect solution. So yes, can be very expensive, and there's some other workarounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? The doctor gave me something like this. Are these things quite effective?
Raj, turn to the side so we can see the side view of that device.
Like
Oh,
this?
it's a spacer for your medication with a mask.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so it seals around your face and then you can just breathe nice and easy breaths.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it's really good if you get short of breath, because if you get really short of breath, you don't
Yeah.
really effectively seal your lips around that tiny little hole. So the mask makes it more comfortable for you.
Okay, okay. So
Yeah.
this can help, This can
Yeah.
help.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the group?
I had a question for you, Lindsay.
Yes,
Is there a Better Breathers group now on Zoom?
Oh, Alexa just left and she's the better breather. I don't think so. I think it's just a Facebook group, to be honest,
Okay.
where you log in and you can answer questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get the information from Alexa and I'll make sure it's sent out to the group as well. It would be nice to kind of have a Zoom group, but I don't think, I think it's nice to have the questions.
BC Lung does have started theirs on Zoom now because they didn't get a good turnout for the meetings.
And do you have that information with you?
Yeah, if you talk to men or talk to Maureen, there's BC Lung has a province-wide now Zoom group that they've started for better breathers.
Wonderful. Well,
It's
there
just
you go.
started, I think, it's either the first meeting or it's coming up this month. So if you check with Dr. Men when she gets back.
Okay.
In Baltimore, I guess she's still there. Anyways, there's one available.
Okay. And that's through BC Lung as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. I just see it. I'll put the link in the chat for you.
I have a question.
Yes, who is it?
Rick Kinney.
Wonderful, Rick. What's your question?
Would you recommend using a CPAP unit during bad air times? Or to not?
I haven't been asked that question. Lindsay, you look like you had something on the tip of your tongue. I didn't want to.
We've been asked that question, or I used to work in sleep, and so I had patients ask that. Now, is it CPAP that you actually use regularly, or are you thinking just to use it when it's smoky outside?
No, I'm supposed to use it regularly, but was wondering if I should use it when it's smoky outside.
You definitely can. I recommend it, but it means that you have to be on top of cleaning, especially that filter at the back of the device.
You think that's good enough, that little filter?
It's one layer. You should have filters on your furnaces, like Dr. Brigham said, like air filter and everything. But your CPAP device does have that little filter at the back. Some are washable, some are just disposable.
Yeah.
But make sure you're on top of your weekly cleaning with that, because as soon as they clog, then the device tries to pull room air in to create the pressure to keep your airway open.
Yeah.
And it can actually damage the device if it has to pull against a clogged filter. So being on top of that, it's just fine as long as your filters are good.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think too, I'm just gonna say that was Lindsay, thank you so much for jumping in and answering that with your background. Just to kind of hammer home Lindsay's point too, that This is in addition to optimizing the conditions of air in your home. We wouldn't suggest that you don't have an air purifier and just on smoky days, just put your CPAP on. You should use your CPAP. I think Lindsay, and you can correct me if I'm speaking untoward, but use your CPAP as you normally would, clean your filter, but you should still optimize as best you can the conditions in your home.
100%. Yes, I agree.
Is there an air purifier that you recommend?
Oh, no specific one. Really, truly, honestly. It's I recommend getting one and getting one that fits to your space and getting one that has a HEPA filter. The additional piece of information that I sometimes find helpful, but some air purifiers won't even place this on there, is something called the MERV value, minimum efficiency reporting value, and they suggest having 13 or higher. So now you have that piece of information, but quite honestly, I find that it's a lot to keep track of. And really, I think the most important things are that you've got a HEPA filter in there. You've picked one that isn't actively producing ozone, right? So most of the HEPA filter ones don't do that, but you don't want a fancy electromagnetic something one, and that it's rated to your space. So know the space you're going to have it in. Yeah. It'll work more efficiently in a smaller space. That doesn't mean you have to be in a closet or anything, but like get one that fits to the space and ideally your bedroom.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Couple more minutes, everyone, before you lose this opportunity. Any other questions?
This is going to be recorded so we can refer back to it.
100%. It's still recording. We'll finish it up as soon as we're done. And then it takes just a few days, and then you can go onto YouTube and just Google BC Lung Ask the Experts.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I have a question. At the beginning, you mentioned Tuesday and Thursday live classes. How do you get involved in that?
Oh, that is Maureen. She mentioned it. And Maureen, are you able to answer that for me? Are you hanging around?
Yeah,
There
so
she is.
that's our online virtual exercise program, and it's free for anyone to participate. But most of our participants have lung conditions, and that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays by Zoom, from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. and it's led by a kinesiologist. You can find out information from our website on how to sign up for that, and we have classes that are until June 13th, and then we will take a break in the summer and we'll be back in the fall. So I'll type in the link to our website in the chat. So if you want to just follow that, you can get the link to register for the classes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen. Perfect timing.
I have a question.
Yes, who are we speaking to?
Roy Warner,
Roy, lovely.
the air filters you're talking about, what type of businesses are into the selling of those things to us?
Oh, where would you purchase a HEPA filter?
Yeah,
Ooh. For an air filter specifically?
so what?
For an air filter specifically?
No, well, I don't know. I'm kind of, this is me being first at looking at doing the house.
Best way to be.
Oh, somebody said Canadian Tire,
Canadian
Yeah.
Tire has a lot of them.
Okay, there you go.
except I
Yeah.
can't shop in their store.
I know.
The
that's
smell of the rubber just.
You can
Take
also order
one.
them online.
Yes, you can order online.
Yeah.
if that's on-
But
Good old Amazon.
yeah, good old Amazon, Canadian Tire, some pharmacies have them available. Alan,
Oh,
thank you,
There's a
Alan.
home hardware. Ah,
Who?
Home
Home
hardware
hardware.
is the other one.
Okay.
it's in Canada.
Make your
Home Depot, Rona, many of them. Call ahead. I would absolutely suggest calling ahead because a lot of times, especially as we're getting into fire season, sometimes they'll be sold out and waiting to restock. Yeah.
Rick, are you showing us your homemade air filter?
Yes, I've made quite a number of them for BC Lung, and the Marines there, they have a do-it-yourself thing, and it's probably one of the best ones on the market. You just replace the filter every once in a while, but there is a do-it-yourself instructions, really easy. Just buy the box fan, buy the filters, And
Who was that through?
for BC Lung,
Through BC Lung. I posted the link for the BC CDC one that Emily spoke of, but
Yeah.
BC Lung also has one. There you go.
well, they're partnered with Simon Fraser. Then they put the workshops on, but in the meanwhile, they are simple to make, that you can just follow the instructions and make them yourself.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah.
I know the instructions that, possibly Maureen has some instructions left over from some of the workshops that they've had at BC Lung, or at least,
Oh, there it is in the chat.
There. There. So Emily's put the BC CDC one, and then I just linked the BC Lung do-it-yourself air cleaner as well. So it's in the chat box as well.
And these air purifiers that we purchased, they have to have what rating on them again? I missed that part.
Oh,
But-
sure. So there's something called, again, not all of them have this designation. I will tell you the ones that I purchased did not have this, didn't have this listed. I since called the company and everything, but it's MERV, MERV. It's a efficiency reporting value of 13 or above is ideal. But again, some of them won't have that listed. And the most important thing is that it's a HEPA filter, non-ozone producing, and that it is, you take a look at the space rating, and usually it'll have this sticker on it for AHAM, which is Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers. And that helps to tell you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's one of the most common questions. I think it's, you go in and the number of choices are overwhelming. Really, we need a navigator
Yeah.
in stores.
Well,
Oh.
everyone, have we answered all the questions? Nothing else is burning a hole in your mind?
Only in my mind.
Wonderful. Well, then I want to say thank you to everyone for attending. We really love having you all come. And I really want to say thank you to Dr. Brigham, Emily. This was a phenomenal talk. This is going to be a permanent fixture, I feel, every year. It's such great information. So please, everyone, stay safe, stay out of the smoke, and have a good rainy day like I am having.
Oh, you'll be doing